Hello, everybody. I am happy to be a guest this month on Sara Scraps' project called Laura Whitaker Sketches Reimagined. So let's get started. Here is the sketch we're working with this month, and I've noticed several things about this sketch. There's some mixed media in the background. There is a row of 3 photos, effectively breaking the layout into thirds. And then there are those hearts that make up 3 clusters of embellishments and titles for this layout. So I'm going to use my Hip Kit Club kit for the month of November, and I've decided that my background will be this pattern paper here that has a calm side on the B side, and then it has a busier side on the A side, which I'm going to use for that middle third of my layout. Now I want to get some pattern paper in here to build some layers that is calmer than that candy cane layout. And so I go for this red checked pattern, which totally reminds me of the kitchen and cooking. And that is what my layout is about. My daughter is baking our annual gingerbread cookies and gingerbread houses. And so I just keep building up layers with various colors in calm and busy patterns. And then when I put my layout back together again, I just connect those pieces up with some scraps on the back side. With my base layer completed, I move on to embellishing, and I decide that I'm going to use this chipboard title instead of building up a title with my alphabets, and I set all of that excess stuff off to the side. I know I want to use those wood grain elements as to replace the hearts in the sketch as my 3 clusters. And then I'm going to use this stencil for my mixed media. Now I did add stitching to the layout because there was stitching on the sketch, and I like to do that. So I went ahead and did that before doing the mixed media because stitching through the mixed media layer can be a little hard on the machine. So I let that dry overnight, and then I am ready to move on. Now you'll notice my circle is a little wonky, and if that bugs you, you can certainly use like a plate or even a pre-cut circle of some sort to give yourself a sketch before you take it to the machine to stitch around. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to go with it. And so here I am moving on with my clusters, and I decided to use these chipboard, or not chipboard, sorry, wood veneer elements because they remind me of gingerbread cookies. So I pick out shapes that kind of go with the images in my picture. And then I'm ready to add some more elements to my cluster. So I like to use the branding strips off of pattern paper to add little banners to things because the prints tend to be a little smaller in scale and it can add nice pops of color. So I'm starting to build some banners up there for a festive edge. Now in the sketch, this third cluster was next to the title. I just moved mine up to the left-hand corner to make a bigger visual triangle because my whole layout is kind of at a bigger scale than in the sketch. Now I noticed in my sketch that there is a tag element, and I don't have any tags in my kit, so I'm just going to go ahead and make my own. Sorting through the pattern papers, I didn't come up with a pattern paper that I liked all that well, so I ended up going with this green, which is going to work. But if I go with this green, that means I need to add green into other areas of my layout so that it's cohesive and it's not just this random green tag just hanging out there. So I add a little green banner to my top cluster. Now I'm going to go ahead and build my own tag. So I just kind of take a guess and cut off a strip of how big I think the tag will end up being. And I make sure the trees are upright when I cut the strip. And then I decide how wide I want the tag to be. And then I realize it's just a little bit too tall. So I just trim it down a bit. And that's a great thing about making your own tags because you can make them the size you want. Now to get that nice tag corner, I just put little dots against each side of the top 2 corners, and then I just cut between the dots, and that gives me a clean tag shape. And then I'll just hole punch it and tie it up with some of the leftover threads that I had from doing my stitching and give it a little tag thread piece, and then that tag is ready to go. So now I'm going to build up all my clusters, and as I'm building my clusters, I'm trying to add different elements to each of the clusters. So on that tag, you'll notice that I put a floral cluster. And so up in the top, I'm going to make sure I add some kind of greenery embellishment. So I found a little holly sprig there, and the candy canes up in that cluster match the candy cane paper, so that kind of ties the elements together. And then down in my bottom cluster is where my journaling is going to go, like in the sketch itself. And I have that pink strip there set aside because I thought I was going to do my journaling on these strips, and it turns out that I had too much to say, which is often my problem with journaling is too much rather than not enough to say. So, and then I decided, that pink didn't really work anyway because while there's little bits of pink here and there, that large block of pink didn't really fit with the rest of the layout. So I pulled in more of that green. From those other clusters that I've got going on, and that made a lot more sense and gave me more room to do the journaling I wanted to do. So I finish off all my clusters with a few sequins, a few enamel dots, make sure I have enough of those kind of floral elements to each cluster, and then I'm going to call this layout done. So here is a final look at the project, and I had fun taking this layout that had absolutely nothing to do with Christmas and turning it into a holiday layout. And that's the great thing about sketches is that you can totally mix them up and make them your own. So I want to thank Sarah for having me on for this month's guest. And if you haven't seen her channel and her take on this sketch, there are links below so that you are sure to check her out as well. And that is a side-by-side of the sketch and the layout. And I will be back later in the month with more projects for you. I'll see you next time.